You told a story at dinner last night. You thought it landed. You noticed. And now you're lying in bed running the whole thing back, wondering what went wrong. Wondering if you're just boring. I want to tell you something, and I mean this sincerely. The content probably wasn't the problem. The story was fine. The information was fine. The real issue is how people feel while you're talking. And that's a completely different thing from what you're saying. That's what we need to talk about. So, here we go. The most common version of this, I call it the self-broadcast. You know exactly what this looks like because you've been stuck on the receiving end of it. Someone asks how your weekend was, and you launch into a full 7-minute recap. The restaurant, the parking situation, the weird thing that happened at the grocery store. There's research on this. A team at Harvard found that people who ask more questions in conversation are consistently rated as more likable and more intelligent, even when they say less. And weirdly, the person who says less often comes off better because they made the other person feel heard. So if you catch yourself in broadcast mode, here's the simplest thing you can do. After you share something, just bring them back in. What about you? Have you dealt with something like that? That's it? That tiny bridge turns monologue into dialogue in one sentence. Try it once, and you'll feel the difference immediately. Now say a friend comes to you and they're exhausted. They've had one of those weeks where everything piled up. Work is a mess. They barely slept. They're running on fumes. They start telling you about it. They're venting, getting it out, just needing someone to hear them. And what do? You say something like, well, have you tried waking up earlier? Or maybe you should set better boundaries at work. Or have you looked into that meditation app I told you about? And you watch them shut down. They just get quieter, nod, say, yeah, maybe. What just happened is you skipped a step. You jumped straight to fixing without ever acknowledging what they were feeling. I know why we do this. It's uncomfortable to sit with someone else's pain. Fixing feels productive. Fixing feels helpful. But most of the time, what someone needs first is just to hear you say, that sounds really draining. I'm sorry you're going through that. You're letting them feel understood before you try to fix anything. And then, if they want advice, they'll ask. Lead with empathy before the to-do list. Every single time. And that brings us to silence. Most people treat silence in a conversation like a fire alarm going off. The second there's a gap, they rush to fill it. They rephrase what they just said. They ask a follow-up question before the first one has even landed. They laugh nervously or throw in some filler just to keep the air from going still. I used to do this constantly, by the way, and I still catch myself sometimes. Research on conversational dynamics found that when you allow even a 2-second pause after asking a question, the depth and quality of the other person's response increases dramatically. 2 seconds, that's nothing. And yet most people can't even make it to 1. Because silence feels like failure, like the conversation is dying. But silence is usually the moment where the real answer starts showing up. So, the tip here is deceptively simple. Ask your question, then sit. Let it land. Don't rephrase. Don't offer multiple choice options. Just let the space exist and trust that they'll fill it with something more real than what they would have said if you'd rushed them. Give them that room. And then there's something else people miss all the time. The moment the other person has already checked out. It looks like this. You're in the middle of telling someone something, and they've already left. They're still standing there physically, mentally, emotionally. They checked out 30 seconds ago, and you didn't notice because you were too focused on finishing your point. The signs are always there. Glazed eyes, phone glance, the slight body pivot toward the door or toward someone else in the room. A smile that's gone a little too polite, a little too fixed. Most people miss those signals because they're too busy trying to finish what they were saying. I get it. When you're in the middle of a thought, it feels important to land it. You think if you just finish the point, they'll come back. Usually they won't. Attention doesn't work that way. Once someone's mentally left, talking more pushes them further away. So, the move here is this. Watch for the body, not just the words. When they shift, you shift with them. Wrap it up. Ask them something. Change the energy. You don't have to finish every thought to be heard. Sometimes the shorter version is the one that actually sticks. Someone shows up to a relaxed, low-key dinner, and they're at an 11, loud, hyper, dominating the energy, like they just came from a rally. Everyone else quietly recalibrates around them. Or the reverse. Everyone's laughing, the mood is light, and someone walks in with this heavy, draining energy and just flattens the whole table. You know that feeling when you're at a gathering and one person's mood becomes everyone's problem? Both of those mismatches create the same result. People start avoiding you because being around you feels like work. And while we're on the subject of what people pick up on, your body is talking louder than you are. You could say all the right words, ask the right questions, validate their feelings, tell a great story, and still lose the room entirely because of what your body is communicating. Crossed arms, phone on the table face up, eyes wandering over their shoulder every few seconds, leaning back like you're already halfway out the door. People pick up on all of that faster than you think, and people read them instantly. Even if they can't articulate what they're picking up on, they just know something feels off. Uncross your arms and face them fully. Put your phone away, actually away, in your pocket. If your body says you're not really there, people feel that. Make it match what your mouth is trying to say. Then there's the performance trap. This is the one where you're auditioning instead of connecting. Bigger words than the moment calls for, dropped references to things you've read or seen or done. This subtle keynote speaker energy, where every sentence sounds like it was rehearsed in the shower. I know exactly where this comes from, because I've lived inside it. Underneath the performance is usually insecurity. The logic goes something like this. If I'm impressive enough, they'll want to keep talking to me. If I show them how much I know, they'll respect me. If I use the right words, they'll see that I belong here. We've all met that person, the one who's trying so hard to sound smart that you can feel the effort radiating off them. I've been that person. And the harder they try, the more distance they create, because the performance looks like openness, but it keeps people out. The tip here is one of the hardest ones to actually do. Laugh at yourself. Sound like an actual person. Use normal words and admit when you don't know something. The people who are the most magnetic in conversation are the ones who sound the most real. That's the whole thing. And then there's this other habit a lot of people have. You know this one. Sorry, this might be stupid, but by the time you actually get to your thought, you've already told the other person to dismiss it. You've undercut yourself before you even began. I understand why people do this. It's self-protection. If I preface everything with a disclaimer, it won't hurt as much if they disagree. Except it backfires completely, because what the other person hears is uncertainty. They hear someone who doesn't trust their own thoughts enough to just say them. And there's data on this that I found kind of unsettling. Research on language patterns and perceived credibility consistently finds that excessive hedging reduces how competent and trustworthy a speaker is perceived to be, even when the content is identical to someone who states it plainly. The point lands differently when you sound like you believe your own thought. So the tip is this: state your thought and own it, then invite theirs. You can be open to disagreement without apologizing for having a perspective in the first place. And that brings me to two habits that are so common. Most people don't even register they're doing them. Someone shares something, maybe a small win, maybe something hard they went through. And before they've even finished the sentence, you jump in with, "Oh yeah, same thing happened to me, except mine was worse." Or you interrupt mid-thought because you think you know where they're going. You finish their sentence for them, you jump ahead because you're so eager to show that you get it. What actually happens in that moment is they feel unseen. They feel like what they shared couldn't hold your attention for even 30 seconds before you made it about you. And after a while, they just stop giving you much. They've learned that whatever they offer is going to get redirected. The one-up feels like bonding. It feels like you're saying, "Me too, I relate." But there's a difference between relating and redirecting. Relating says, "That resonates with me. Tell me more." Redirecting says, "Enough about you. Here's my version." The tip is straightforward. Let them finish, then sit with it for a beat before you respond. Want to level up your people skills? Join our YouTube membership for early access to scripts, input on future topics, and connection with a community that gets the social struggle. Click join below, and let's master human interaction together. Now here's one people rarely think about. They speak in the same tone, at the same speed, at the same pitch, regardless of what they're saying. Everything blends together into this Flat, forgettable hum. Then there's uptalk. That pattern where every statement sounds like a question, where your pitch goes up at the end, like you're asking for permission to have said the thing you just said. It drains your credibility instantly, because the delivery signals uncertainty even when you're sure of what you're saying. Filler words are another layer. Basically, they create static. A few are natural, human even. But when every other word is filler, the listener has to work harder to find the actual point. And eventually, they stop trying. And then there's monotone delivery. You could have the most incredible story, dramatic, funny, meaningful, and if you tell it in one flat register, it dies. So slow down and drop your pitch at the end of statements instead of raising it. Pause before the punchline and let the silence do the work. The sentence that matters most should be the one you say the slowest. Give it room to breathe. This is the part that might sting a little, so I want to say it with care. The real problem, the one that ties almost all of these habits together, is that you're focused on yourself. When you're broadcasting, you're thinking about yourself. When you're rushing to fix someone, you're managing your own discomfort with their pain. When you're performing, you're protecting your image. When you're filling silence, you're soothing your own anxiety. When you're one-upping, you're feeding your own need to be seen. When you're ignoring exit cues, you're prioritizing your point over their presence. Every single one of these habits has the same fingerprint. I'm saying this because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's actually the good news, because the fix isn't learning 50 new techniques or memorizing conversation frameworks. It's one shift in orientation. Stop trying to be interesting and start being interested. The people everyone wants to talk to, the ones who light up a room, who make you feel like the best version of yourself, they're doing something surprisingly quiet. They're just paying attention. They make you feel like the most interesting person in the room, and that's a posture, a way of showing up. I'm not entirely sure why it's so rare, but it is. You know that person, and if you're lucky, you have at least one in your life who remembers what you said last week, the small stuff. You mentioned in passing that you had a dentist appointment you were nervous about, and 3 days later they text you, "Hey, how did it go?" 6 words, and it hits you with this warmth you weren't expecting, because it means they were actually listening. They were absorbing what you said and holding it. Even just reflecting back what someone said helps more than people realize. So what you're saying is, and then you reflect back what they just told you, in your own words. It sounds almost too simple to matter. When someone does it to you, though, it's electric, because it proves they're processing you, turning your words over in their head. And then there's vulnerability. Small, honest reveals. I've been feeling that way too, actually. I don't really know what I'm doing most of the time either. These tiny admissions creates trust faster than anything. They give the other person permission to stop performing too. Remember what I said about the performance trap? So use their name, reference what they said earlier. Make them feel remembered, because being remembered is one of the deepest forms of being loved. One more thing. How you end a conversation matters just as much as how you start it. Most people let conversations die instead of closing them. The energy just kind of fades. Someone glances at their phone. Someone says, "Well, I should probably," and then it's this awkward shuffle toward the door, where neither person quite knows how to wrap it up. The last thing you say is what they carry away. It's the note that lingers. Think about the difference between a conversation that ends with, "All right, see you later," and one that ends with, "Hey, that thing you said about your sister, I'm really glad you told me that." Those are 2 completely different experiences. One is forgettable, and the other stays with someone for days. Gratitude works here, and so does a callback to something they said earlier. A light laugh, a moment of genuine appreciation for their time. You're choosing to end the way you want them to remember you, instead of letting the moment dissolve into nothing. Reference something they said, and leave them feeling seen. A good ending sticks with people, and if you close it right, they won't stop for a while. Which brings everything back to where we started. That thread runs through every single one of these habits: the broadcasting, the fixing, the performing, the interrupting, the one-upping, the hedging, silence killing. All of it comes back to the same place. And the way out of it is simple, even if it takes practice. Be curious, be present, and be the person who makes someone else feel like they matter, because you genuinely care what they have to say. You don't have to overhaul your entire personality, and you don't have to memorize a list. Just pick one thing from everything we talked about. Pick the one that made you wince, the one where you thought, oh no, I definitely do that. That's your starting point. One shift, one conversation. Pay a little more attention to the person standing right in front of you. I genuinely like to know which one it was. Drop it in the comments, name the thing, because naming it is the first step to changing it. Learn something new? Hit that like button, share it with others, tap subscribe, and stick around for more. Got thoughts? I'd love to hear them in the comments.